On February 1st, 1959, 9 ski hikers died mysteriously in the mountains of what is now Russia. The night of Dyatlov Pass incident remains one of the most haunting and perplexing mysteries of the 20th century, a tragedy that transformed 9 vibrant young people into the subjects of endless speculation. Beyond the baffling forensic evidence and conspiracy theories, there were real lives with dreams, families who loved them, and a sole survivor who carried the weight of their loss for 54 years. This is their story, woven with the human details that statistics and autopsy reports often omit. The expedition team, more than just victims. The group that assembled in late January 1959 was not a random collection of adventurers, but a tight-knit team of experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnical Institute in Sverdlovsk, now Yavetskinburg. Most were students or recent graduates, united by their love of the outdoors and pursuit of the prestigious Grade 3 hiking certification, the highest award available in the Soviet Union at the time. Igor Alexeyevich Dyatlov, the 23-year-old group leader, was a radio engineering student with a quiet determination that inspired confidence in others. Born on January 13, 1936, he had planned this expedition meticulously, choosing the challenging February route to Mount Oturin, specifically to test the group's skills. His sister Tatyana later revealed the poignant backstory of their mother's premonition. But he pleaded with her, "Just one last time, Mama, just one last time." And indeed, it was his last time. Their mother never forgave herself for allowing him to go, unable to come to terms with his terrible and incomprehensible death. Zinaida Alexandrovna Kolmorga, 22, was a cheerful and capable young woman who wrote home with touching domestic details that revealed her connection to ordinary life. In her final letter, she assured her family, "We're going camping, 10 of us, and it's a great bunch of people. I have all the warm clothes I need, so don't worry about me. How are you? Has the cow calved yet? I love her milk." She kept a diary during the journey, documenting the group's progress with enthusiasm. On January 31, she wrote of camping on the Mansi Trail, adding with dark irony, "We're on the eastern slope of Kholat-Syakhl, which I'm told means Mountain of Death." Ludmila Alexandrovna Dubnina was just 20 years old, was the youngest member of the expedition. Her diary captured the playful camaraderie of the group during their train journey. "In the train, we all sang songs accompanied by a mandolin. Then, out of the blue, this really drunk guy came up to our boys and accused them of stealing a bottle of vodka. He demanded it back and threatened to punch them in the teeth. But he couldn't prove anything, and eventually he got lost. We sang, and no one even noticed how we slipped into a discussion about love, and kisses in particular." Rustem Slobodin, 23, was described by those who knew him as reserved and quiet, a long-distance runner whose athletic discipline served him well on the trail. Yuri Krysovashenko, also 23, was an engineer who would be found near the cedar tree, having apparently bitten off a piece of his own knuckle in the final moments, a detail that spoke to unimaginable distress. Yuri Doshenko, 21, Alexander Klevenkov, 24, and Nikolai Vladimirovich Thibault-Brignoles, 23, whose French surname hinted at a family history reaching beyond Soviet borders, completed the core student group. The oldest and most enigmatic member was Semyon Alexander Ayeskovich Soloturov, 38, a war veteran and experienced sport instructor who had fought in the Great Patriotic War. His age and experience set him apart from the students, and he traveled with a camera documenting their journey. Some later speculation would question his presence, but to the group he was simply an experienced companion. The sole survivor, Yuri Yefimowitch Yudin. No account of this tragedy is complete without acknowledging the 10th member, the one who lived. Yuri Yudin, a 22-year-old economics student, had joined the expedition despite chronic health issues. On January 28th, just 5 days into the journey, his sciatica and a congenital heart condition forced him to turn back. The group saw him off at the deserted North 2 mining settlement, redistributing his supplies among their packs. Zaneta wrote with genuine regret, "Yuri Yudin is leaving us today. His sciatic nerves have flared up again, and he has decided to go home. Such a pity." Yudin returned to Svendlovsk, expecting to reunite with his friends in a few weeks. Instead, he became the keeper of their memory. He never stopped wondering what happened that night, telling an interviewer shortly before his death, "If I had a chance to ask God just one question, it would be, what really happened to my friends that night?" Yuri Yudin died on April 27, 2013, at the age of 76. Taking to his grave any private insights or suspicions he may have harbored. He was the last living link to the Dyatlov Pass expedition. A timeline of innocence and terror. January 23rd through 27th, 1959, the journey begins. The group departed Sverdlovsk by train, arriving in the town of Idvel on January 25th. From there, they traveled by truck to Vizhai, the last inhabited outpost in the northern Sverdlovsk Oblast. On January 27th, they began their trek on skis towards Gora Orton, a mountain whose name is the local Mansai language, carrying an ominous warning, "Don't go there." January 28th, the parting. On the trail, Yuri Yudin's health deteriorated. With great reluctance, he said goodbye to his friends. The remaining 9 continued north into the wilderness. January 31st, preparing for the ascent. The group reached the edge of the highlands and established a storage cache, leaving surplus food and equipment for their return journey. They spent the night at the tree line, preparing for the final push towards Otorten. February 1st, the fatal camp. The day began with sun, but conditions worsened rapidly. "There was sun in the morning, now it's very cold," Zaneta wrote. "All day long we followed the river. A snowstorm descended, reducing visibility and disorienting the hikers. They intended to cross the path and descend to the shelter of the forest on the far side, but drifted westward onto the slope of Kholat Sakal, the mountain of death. Realizing their error, Dyatlov made a fateful decision. Rather than lose hard-won altitude by retreating 1.5 kilometers downhill to the tree line, he chose to pitch camp on the open slope. They excavated a platform in the snow, erecting their large tent, and secured it against the wind. Inside the tent, life continued with ordinary routine. They prepared a meal, slicing pork fat, a high-energy delicacy for hikers. They sang songs, perhaps discussed the day's navigational error, and prepared for sleep. The last images on the film recovered from their cameras showed them happily digging snow to set up their tent. Approximately 10 p.m. to midnight, something went catastrophically wrong. Whatever happened, it happened quickly. The group's tent was slashed open from the inside with knives, multiple cuts allowing rapid egress. The occupants fled into the night, leaving behind their boots, warm clothing, skis, and supplies. 9 sets of footprints led from the tent and downslope toward the shelter of the forest 1.5 kilometers away. The tracks told a story of desperate, disorganized flight. Some in boots, some wearing only socks, some barefoot. The temperature hovered around -20 Celsius to -30 Celsius, with wind and snow creating deadly wind chill. February 2nd, the night of dying. The group regrouped at the tree line near a large cedar tree. They managed to build a small fire using small branches. Two members, Yuri Doroshenko and Yuri Korvasenko, apparently succumbed to hypothermia first, their bodies found near the fire pit minimally dressed. They had stripped partially, a phenomenon known as paradoxical undressing that occurs in severe hypothermia, when blood vessels suddenly dilate, creating a fatal sensation of overheating. The remaining 7 faced an impossible choice: return to the tent for supplies or find better shelter. 3, Igor, Dyatlov, Sonata, Kolmogrova, and Rustem Slobodin, attempted to climb back up the slope toward the tent. They died on the ascent, their bodies found later in positions suggesting exhaustion and hypothermia. Dyatlov was found clutching a branch, face down in the snow. Sonata's body appeared to be reaching back toward the tent. Rustem, better dressed than most, made it farthest. His watch stopped at 8:45 a.m., perhaps marking the moment he could no longer continue. The remaining 4, Ludmila Dublina, Alexander Kolatov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, and Semyon Zolotorov, continued farther downhill, constructing a snow cave or den in a ravine near a small stream. There they huddled together, their better clothing suggesting they had dressed more warmly before leaving the tent. They died there, their bodies not discovered until May, when spring snowmelt revealed their final sanctuary. The Discovery, a Family's Nightmare. February 12, 1959, the first missed deadline. Igor Dyatlov had promised to telegraph the Institute's sports club upon returning to Vizhai by February 12th. When no message arrived, there was initial patience. Delays were common in winter expeditions. February 20, the alarm is raised. Families, now deeply worried, demanded action. The Institute organized volunteer rescue groups, soon joined by police and military assets, including helicopters. February 26th, the tent. Student rescuer Mikhail Shavarin spotted the tent partially buried in snow. "We'd gone about 500 meters when on the left I saw the tent," he recalled. "Part of the canvas was poking out, but the rest was covered in snow. I used an ice pick laying nearby to uncover the entrance." Inside he found rucksacks neatly lined up, a pile of boots, one blanket, the route map, official papers, money, a flask of alcohol, and sliced pork fat, as if they were getting ready to have supper or something and didn't have time. Then he saw the slash marks inside the tent, cuts made by someone escaping. Outside footprints led toward the forest. February 27th, the first bodies. Near the cedar tree, Shavarin's group found Yuri Doshenko and Yuri Krevashenko. When we were 20 meters away, we saw a brown spot. The hands and feet were reddish-brown. They were in their underwear, minimally dressed for the deadly cold. March through May 1959, the remaining bodies. Over subsequent weeks, the other bodies were found. Igor Dyatlov on March 5th, face down in the snow. Zaneta Kolmogrova, positioned as if trying to scramble back to the tent. Rustem Slobodin, with a fractured skull and his watch stopped at 8:45 a.m. His body was better dressed than most, suggesting he'd had more time to prepare before fleeing. In May, after snowmelt, the final 4 were discovered in the ravine. Ludmila Dubanina, Alexander Kolatov, Nikolai Thibault-Brignoles, and Semyon Zolotorov. The scene was horrifying. Thibault-Brignoles had a fractured skull with bone fragments driven into his brain. Dubanina and Zolotorov had crushed chests with rib fractures so severe they suggested immense force. Both were missing their eyes. Dubanina was missing her tongue. Kolatov had a twisted neck and an odd injury behind his ear. The families asked what happened. The official investigation, led by investigator Lev Ivanov, concluded that a compelling natural force caused the deaths, a vague finding that satisfied no one. Ivanov was subsequently relocated to an obscure town in Katzlachian, and the case files were classified. Tatyana, Igor Dyatlov sister, was forbidden from attending her brother's funeral due to the condition of his body. Years later, she described seeing a photograph of him in his coffin. It was just dreadful. He looked entirely different to how he appeared before. Her mother could only identify him by the gap between his teeth. His hair had turned gray. The families were told, "You'll never know the truth, so stop asking questions." So what could we do? Remember back then, if they had told you to keep quiet, you would obey. The parents of the other victims suspected military involvement but were silenced. Valery Yamnov, a member of the indigenous Mansi community, recalled that Soviet investigators initially blamed his people, arresting and torturing several Mansi in search for answers. If any of our people had been involved in that crime, they would have thrown us all into prison because it was a harsh time. Back then, people were executed by firing squad without investigation or trial. Lingering questions and scientific inquiry. Decades later, Oleg Arapov, a researcher from Tyumen, wrote 3 books on the incident, gained access to private archives, and uncovered disturbing details. Some of the victims' clothing showed traces of radiation. The temporary mortuary was cordoned off by KGB security, not regular police. A large barrel of alcohol arrived before autopsies. Investigators were instructed to rub it over their naked bodies, a precaution against radiation exposure. Organ samples were sent for chemical analysis but later vanished from laboratories along with all associated paperwork. Lev Ivanov finally broke his silence in 1990 as the Soviet Union crumbled. He confessed his astonishment at the autopsy results, mentioning reports of fiery spheres in the sky that night. He apologized to the families for never learning the truth. Yuri Yudin, the survivor, carried his own suspicions. He noted that authorities seemed more interested in why the hikers were in the area than in how they died. If they were really killed by a natural force, then there would be no secret, and we would not be talking about this 53 years on, he observed shortly before his death. Modern science has attempted answers. In 2021, researchers from EPFL and ETH Zurich, Johann Gahm and Alexander Perzin, published a study suggesting a rare slab avalanche could explain the events. Their mathematical model showed that even on the relatively gentle slope, wind-blown snow could have created a slab that slid onto the tent, causing panic and the hasty evacuation. The severe chest and head injuries could have resulted from the victims falling into the ravine or the snow den collapsing. The missing eyes and tongue could be post-mortem scavenging. Subsequent expeditions to the pass in 2021 and 2022, partially organized for documentary filmmaker Matteo Born, confirmed that avalanches do occur in the area, with evidence of recent snow slab events. But, as Perzin cautioned, we do not claim that now we have a final explanation of what happened, but we added plausibility to the avalanche story. Tatyana Dyatlova remains skeptical. You've seen for yourself what kind of avalanche could there be when their tent was almost intact. A hurricane? Well, maybe, but it's impossible to survive a hurricane. As for a snow slab which crushed their tent, that doesn't explain their injuries. And if it was just an ordinary hike, which went wrong because of extreme weather conditions, I think it means something extraordinary happened. Epilogue: The Living Memorial. Today, a mountain pass bears Igor Dyatlov's name, and a rock outcrop near the site serves as a memorial. But the truest memorial lives in the words the hikers left behind. Zenaita's concern for her family's cow, Ludmila's account of the train flirtations and discussions about love, the sliced pork fat waiting for a supper that never came. Yuri Yudin, who outlived his friends by 54 years, was buried with the weight of their memory. Andrei Kiryakov, the prosecutor who reopened the investigation in 2019, offered this epitaph for all 9. It was a heroic struggle. There was no panic, but they had no chance to save themselves under the circumstances. Whether they died by avalanche, military accident, infrasound-induced panic, or something still unknown, they died together. 9 young people who sang songs on a train, dreamed of certification, and faced their final night on a mountain the Mansi people called the Mountain of Death. Their families, silenced for decades, asked questions that still echo. And the Dyatlov Pass incident remains, as it has always been, a human mystery before it is a scientific one.